Hello, and welcome to the Narrowing Path, Walking the Spiritual Walk. My name is Steve Van Eiderstein. Thank y'all for joining me again for this weekend. And I apologize for the delay in the episode release, getting started on this new content. My office got flooded. So it is still not put back together yet. Notice the folding wall behind me. That might be the backdrop for the next one as well as this one. But I appreciate y'all's patience, and I'm really, really excited to actually get into this and start reading about the Hidden Sacrifices chapter from the Byways of Blessedness by James Allen. And it's really been such an impactful chapter for me. And like I said in that video announcing that's what it was going to be, I don't even know how to say it. I've read that so many times, and each time I get a little bit more out of it, So I'm actually excited to do a study of it kind of with you all and really dig into this. So if you want to go ahead, give us a like, give us a subscribe. You'll get a lot of my experience. You'll get a lot of spiritual readings and principles that we'll be talking about here, and inventories as well. This one specifically talks a lot about inventories. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that resonates with everybody. So we have a Facebook page, Instagram, TikTok, whatever you'd like to follow us on. Obviously, right here on YouTube. We're also on Spotify. You can get us on Apple Podcasts as well. Whatever you'd like to. Whatever platform you'd like to use. You can see the shorts and the content. So thank you all again for joining. So let's go ahead and we'll get into it. And we're going to do the reading. So the reading we're going to do today, and again, after I read or announced this last time, I found out, I looked a little bit closer. And this is actually a second edition, not a first edition. Forgive me for the misspeaking, but is still one of the first, or it's still a very early on copy, which is great. This one was published in 1908. I think the original, the copyright was in 1904. So this was a second edition printing of Byways of Blessedness by James Allen. So like I've said before, there's lots of copies you can get. This one I have as well. I'm going to read out of the original because that's what I just like to do. But this is the one I actually do the marking and the highlighting in, as you'll see today. So let's go ahead. We'll do the reading. And this first reading is going to be a couple of pages into the chapter, or just reading like the setup for the rest of the chapter, what we're going to be looking at and why. So go ahead, open up to chapter 5, I believe it is. Let me verify that for you again. But all right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, 5 Hidden Sacrifices. And follow along. And the chapter starts out with a couple of quotes. And again, we're going to read the entire selection first. It won't be the whole chapter. We're just going to do, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.5 pages. Pretty much 6 pages. So it won't be that much just block reading. Then we'll go through it. Just the part we read of this chapter. So again, this will be the first part of the Hidden Sacrifices chapter. So here we go. This is Hidden Sacrifices by James Allen in his book, Byways of Blessedness. Hidden Sacrifices. What need hath man of Eden past, or paradise to come, when heaven is round us and within ourselves? Lowliness is the base of every virtue. He who goes the lowest builds, doubt not, the safest Bailey. Truth is within ourselves. It takes no rise from outward things, whate'er you may believe. Browning. It is one of the paradoxes of truth that we gain by giving up. We lose by greedily grasping. Every gain in virtue necessitates some loss in vice. Every ascension of holiness means some selfish pleasure yielded up. Every forward step on the path of truth demands the forfeit of some self-assertive error. He who would be clothed in new garments must first cast away the old, and he who would find the true must sacrifice the false. The gardener digs in the weeds in order that they may feed with their decay the plants which are good for food. And the tree of wisdom can only flourish on the compost of uprooted follies. Growth, gain, necessitates sacrifice, loss. The true life, the blessed life, the life that is not tormented with passions and pains, is reached only through sacrifice. Not necessarily the sacrifice of outward things, but the sacrifice of the inward errors and defilements, for it is these and these only which bring misery into life. It is not the good and the true that needs to be sacrificed, but the evil and false. Therefore, all sacrifice is ultimately gain, and there is no essential loss. Yet at first the loss seems great, and the sacrifice is painful, but this is because of the self-delusion and spiritual blindness which always accompany selfishness. And pain must always accompany the cutting away of some selfish portion of one's nature. When the drunkard resolves to sacrifice his lust for strong drink, he passes through a period of great suffering, and he feels that he is forfeiting a great pleasure. But when his victory is complete, when the lust is dead and his mind is calm and sober, then he knows that he has gained incalculably by the giving up of his selfish animal pleasure. What he has lost was evil and false and not worth keeping. Nay, its keeping entailed continual misery. But what he has gained in character, in self-control, in soberness, and greater peace of mind is good and true, and it was necessary that he should acquire it. So it is with all true sacrifice. It is at first, and until it is completed, painful. And this is why men shrink from it. They cannot see any purpose in abstaining from and overcoming selfish gratification. It seems to them like losing so much that is sweet, seems to them like courting misery, and giving up all happiness and pleasure. And this be so, for if a man could know that by giving up his particular form of selfishness, his gain in happiness would be immeasurably greater, unselfishness, which is now so difficult of attainment, would then be rendered infinitely more difficult of achievement. For his desire for the greater gain, his selfishness, would thereby be greatly intensified. No man can become unselfish and thereby at his highest bliss until he is willing to lose. Looking for neither gain nor reward, it is the state of mind which constitutes unselfishness. A man must be willing to humbly sacrifice his selfish habits and practices because they are untrue and unworthy, and for the happiness of those about him, without expecting any reward or looking for any good to accrue to himself. Nay, he must be prepared to lose for himself, to forfeit pleasure and happiness, even life itself, if by so doing he can make the world more beautiful and happy. But does he lose? Does the miser lose when he gives up his lust for gold? Does the thief lose when he abandons stealing? Does the libertine lose when he sacrifices his unworthy pleasures? No man loses by the sacrifice of self or some portion of self. Nevertheless, he thinks he will lose by so doing, and because he so thinks, he suffers. And this is where the sacrifice comes in. This is where he gains by losing. All true sacrifice is within. It is spiritual and hidden, and is prompted by deep humility of heart. Nothing but the sacrifice of self can avail, and to this must all men come sooner or later during their spiritual evolution. But in what does this self-abnegation consist? How is it practiced? Where is it sought and found? It consists in overcoming the daily proneness to selfish thoughts and acts. It is practiced in our common intercourse with others. It is found in the hour of tumult and temptation. There are hidden sacrifices of the heart, which are infinitely blessed, both to him that makes them and those whom they are made, albeit their making cost much effort and some pain. Men are anxious to do some great thing, to perform some great sacrifice which lies beyond the necessities of their experience, while all the time perhaps they are neglecting the one thing needful, are blind to the sacrifice which by its very nearness is rendered imperative. Where lurks your besetting sin? Where lies your weakness? Where does temptation assail you most strongly? There shall you make your first sacrifice, and shall find thereby the way unto your peace. Perhaps it is anger or unkindness. Are you prepared to sacrifice the angry impulse and word, the unkind thought and deed? Are you prepared to silently endure abuse, attack, accusation, unkindness, refusing to pay back these in their own coin? Nay, more are you prepared to give in return for these dark follies, kindness and loving protection? If so, then you are ready to make those hidden sacrifices which lead to beatific bliss. That was just 3 pages of this whole book. Now, there is so much, gotta take my highlighter and pen off, to be said about that. That chapter is just filled with insights and perspective. And I love that he actually gives the reasoning for why he's talking about what he's doing. He's giving the reasoning and the justification for why things need to go the way they do. You know, we talk a lot today, or there's a lot of talk today, maybe is a better way to say it, about sacrifice, about taking responsibility, about doing these things. And like, this was written in 1904, right? And there's things that were older as well that reference this too. I just love the fact that this is just a principle that has been proven over and over again. We just seem to have the shortest memory ever, and we have to rediscover it over and over again, right? So I really, really enjoy it. And this, again, like I pretty much highlighted everything in this opening. I mean, this entire chapter pretty much is going to end up being highlighted as we go through it. But I love this opening paragraph that it talks about. It is one of the paradoxes of truth that we gain by giving up, we lose by greedily grasping, right? Every gain of earned virtue necessitates some loss in vice. We have to let these things that have served us so readily go, right? If you want to gain in truth, in what is reality per se, what is actually the truth of how life is supposed to work, and where you actually find true meaning and fulfillment and contentment in the act of service to others, right? We have to let go of something, right? He says here we have to let go of vice. Every ascension of holiness means some selfish loss or some selfish pleasure yielded up. Every forward step in the path of truth demands forfeit of some self-assertive error. Right? All of these things, we get quite attached to our opinions. We get quite attached to our perspective. We get quite attached to what we believe to be truth, right? And what I found is, this might be something that causes a little bit of conflict is, if I have to believe it, I don't know if it's actually truly true yet, right? If I'm choosing to believe something, I'm still involved with it. I do believe there is just truth. I do believe there is objective truth in this world and objective principle, So my belief is a secondary structure in there that I have to put in just to make sure I follow the rules that I'm supposed to be following per se. But when you know something is truth, finally, you just follow it. It's not really like a choice at that point. So, and I've gotten to that knowing of truth in a lot of ways, in a lot of things. So I've had an experience with that. But yeah, so I have a lot of beliefs I hold on to, perspective, thoughts, ideas, opinions, preferences, right? And not all of them are healthy. A lot of them are selfish. They're self-centered. They're self-absorbed. And this paradox, he talks about that one of the paradoxes of truth is we gain by giving up. We lose by greedily grasping. All these things we hold on to, all of this stuff that we want to keep close to us because we think it makes life worth living, right? We're trying to fill our own life with pleasure and contentment and all this stuff externally to us, but it doesn't work that way, it turns out, much to my own surprise and dismay. That's what this recovery has been about for me. I've tried many, 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 many ways to actually get that sense of spirituality and connection. And then at the beginning of the next paragraph, he even talked about how, if we want to wear new clothing, we got to take off and get rid of the old stuff, right? We like to gain first and then let go. But when it comes to living, when it comes to spiritual living and truth, we have to be willing to let go first. We have to make the space to be filled again, right? And that's scary. That's scary because that means we have to let go of these things that have served us for so long. And I don't know about you, but for me, that's hard. There's a sense of safety and security in those old behaviors, those old habits and thoughts and perspectives. Even if they are knowingly bad for me, I still would prefer them because I know them, right? So to let go of the old first without having something to backfill it already, going through that is difficult for me. The tree of wisdom can only flourish on the compost of uprooted follies. Growth, gain necessitates sacrifice, loss. So he's given regularly, James Allen refers to the metaphor of a garden. He's saying here, if you want true spiritual growth, you've got to get rid of the weeds and use that space, use the nutrients that were those weeds to compost and then fill the truth, right? To grow that truth. And it's an absolute, that's the absolute reality for myself, right? When I wanted to have a different life, I had to stop drinking and drugging first. I didn't know what it was going to look like, but I had to be willing to let that go, to let something new come in, right? And it's been like that with every bad behavior, whether it's about food, relationships, work, money, whatever it is, I really like to throw anything in there just to make myself feel better. And he goes on to say the true life, the blessed life, is the life that is not tormented with passions and pains, is reached only through sacrifice. Only through sacrifice, right? We have to let go. And it's not also we have to let go of the things that aren't so significant to us, but we have to be willing to let go of the things that we just absolutely are terrified to let go of, right? Because we draw some sort of power from them, or a sense of contentment or peace or security or whatever it might be, knowing that it's there. Those are the things we have to let go, right? He talks about pain as well, right? The sacrifice is essential to this entire process. And the blessed life is only reached through sacrifice, because through sacrifice is the only way you can see what it truly was doing for you, right? Until you let something go, until you actually are willing to change a behavior, a thought, an action, a habit, whatever it is, do you actually know what it does for you, right? Take eating, for example. Why do I love eating chocolate at certain times? Well, it makes me feel better. If I'm overwhelmed, chocolate gives me a temporary dopamine high, and it's something sweet and makes me feel like life's going to be all right for just a moment. I get it. Well, I have to be willing to let that go to see how it serves me selfishly, so then I can actually address the issue. And the issue is that I have to manage my time better. I have to take a different perspective on my life, or what I'm going through, or what I'm doing, right? Maybe I need some more rest. right? And I'm reaching for sugar for no reason. So these are the things that we have to be willing to sacrifice. And I know chocolate might not seem like that big of a deal to many, but it's a beautiful example of what we have to be willing to actually let go of. So, is reached only through the blessed life is reached only through sacrifice, the sacrifice of inward errors and defilements. For it is these and these only which bring misery to life into life, right? So I have to be willing to sacrifice an old perspective, a behavior, and an old thought process, and an old perspective, and change things, right? If I'm thinking, oh, my going it back through school is such a burden, and it's so difficult that I just am miserable, right? And then I'm so miserable, I reach for sugary foods or binge scrolling on my phone, right? Doom scrolling, that's what they call it, right? I have to be willing to change the perspective. Most people would say, well, get rid of school. Well, that's not really the thing. If you're supposed to be in school and you're doing school and there's an intention for that, you're supposed to be there. You don't have to look at it as burdensome. I don't have to sit there and say, this is a tax on my life. It is impeding my selfish desire to do other things. That's really what that is, right? So that is a sacrifice I have to make. So there's a couple sacrifices in there. I'm sacrificing behaviors and perspectives and selfishness and self-centeredness, right? It goes so deep into this thing. It takes your belief structure and just uproots it completely, which I needed. And he goes on to say, there is all sacrifice is ultimately gain, and there is no essential loss. So really, like all this stuff, I've got to sacrifice this. I'm sacrificing all these things for whatever cause it might be, or whatever is coming into your life. We think it's this huge thing. Like when I sacrificed drugs and alcohol, I was letting go of my best friend. I was letting go of the only thing that I knew made me feel better, that let me get through a day, that let me interact with the world, because I wasn't good at that. And it felt like this huge loss, but it wasn't. It really wasn't. It was what needed to be done, and I just didn't know it at the time, right? And that the only way I actually was able to gain in my life, gain perspective, gain peace, gain serenity, gain love, gain contentment, fulfillment, was to let that go. And that was just the first part of it. There was a lot more on the back end, but all these sacrifices are ultimately gains. Yet at first the loss seems great and the sacrifice is painful. Gosh, it's so painful. But this is because of the self-delusion and the spiritual blindness which always accompany selfishness. And the pain must always accompany the cutting away of some selfish portion of one's nature, right? So, this is why I love this. He doesn't mince words very much, and he's very direct. And he was just like, the only reason you don't want to do this, it's me stopping drugs and alcohol isn't painful. It's sacrificing what those things did for me that's painful, right? They let me escape my emotions. They let me escape my uncomfortability with the world. They let me cover up my self-hatred and resentment, right? That's what I had to sacrifice, right? They served me in some way. I hated all the side effects of them that didn't serve the way I wanted them to. But when it came to letting them go, I had to be willing to let that piece go. I had to be willing to let those perceived benefits go. But they weren't really benefits because they were always there. They were never actually handled. I was just covering them up. All I was never allowing myself to learn and grow through those things. So this sacrifice is only painful because we make it so. This sacrifice is only painful because these things that need to be sacrificed, these selfish and self-centered thought patterns and things like that, are delusions that serve us, that we believe we gain from, which we really don't, but we've convinced ourselves that we do, right? Because we don't know another way to live. and we're sacrificing. I love how we've a selfish portion of one's nature. Like that's a part of us, right? That perspective, that belief structure, that whatever it is that's fueling the behavior, that's a part of you. That's a part of me, right? When I do this, I have to be willing to change that. God, that's scary. It's painful. It's uncomfortable. It's vulnerable. It's all those buzzwords, all of those buzzwords. Now, I love that he gives the example of giving up alcohol, or giving up drinking, because that's where many people find their spiritual path to start, is they have to let go of some sort of substance, right? Or some extremely bad behavior, right? There's always a ton of small bad behaviors, but then we usually at some point develop one extremely bad one. And a lot of times it's drinking or other substances, right? So, and he gives this example. When a drunkard resolves to sacrifice his lust for strong drink, he passes into a period of great suffering, right? I went through that. It was a period of great suffering. My whole life was new and painful, and all these emotions. I did not like them. They did not sit well with me. It was nothing I enjoyed, right? But when his victory is complete, so when we've gone through the pain, this doesn't happen beforehand. When we go through and take the actions and have some blind faith even and affect the change, when his victory is complete and when the lust is dead, when the desire to drink is gone, might sound familiar, and his mind is calm and sober, then he knows he has gained incalculably in the giving up of his selfish animal pleasure, right? And that, some might call a spiritual awakening. When we realize the letting go of that has given us a new life, right? Giving up of his selfish animal pleasures, he has gained incalculably. That was my direct experience. What he's lost in evil and false and not worth keeping, what he has lost was evil and false and not worth keeping. Nay, in keeping it entailed his continual misery, right? Like me holding on to that old way of living, those old habits and behaviors and perspectives just destroyed me. When I let those go, I gained character, self-control, soberness of my mind, greater sense of peace and comfort. And I realized that was good and true. Like what he's talking about here is my direct experience of what has happened in my life, right? When I've had these changes. And it wasn't just drugs and alcohol. It was my perspective on relationships. It was my perspective on work, on my perspective of being a friend, on life, on how to be of service to others, my perspective on a God of my understanding, right? So much has changed, right? But you can be told about it all you want, but until you go through the work, you won't see it or feel it. So it's just walking blindly and in faith and trust and belief. So that's why these sacrifices are very, very difficult, very, very hard to actually get behind. And then he goes in to say, it is at first, okay, so it is with all true sacrifice. It is at first and until it is completed, painful. It's not going to be fun, right? Anyone that says spiritual growth is a cakewalk, they're not really doing it. I know that might be a contrary point of view, but it's fun for me now. But that's because I'm willing to walk through the pain, and I believe that whenever I'm going through something in 3 months, I'm not going to be the same man, right? And I know there will be a lesson learned, spiritual growth on the other side of it. I'm letting go of some selfish portion of me, right? So, do I enjoy it? I don't know if I can even say I enjoy it, but I am much more, I have belief in it now, or a knowing in it now that that's what's going to happen. But it is still painful. When I see parts of me I don't like and I'm not proud of, and things that I thought I had handled, or new things that I found I need to handle, it's painful. I'm disappointed. I feel guilty. I feel ashamed of myself. And also I'm scared because I got to let that behavior go. I go through the whole thing again, right? So, until it is completed, painful. And this is why men shrink from it. A lot of people don't actually step up to the plate. I don't always, the first time I'm presented with the opportunity to work on something, but thank God that he gives us many, I guess. but that's why men shrink from it. They cannot see any purpose in abstaining from and overcoming selfish gratification, right? I know a lot of people don't see let me rephrase that. A lot of people see their purpose in life or the purpose to life as their own pleasure and happiness is what they need to aim for. Meaning that they need to live in a way that serves themselves the best, and whether that's pleasure and acceptance or whatever it might be, right? That they should not, almost like they shouldn't be uncomfortable at any point, that they're just looking for a life that just constantly gives them pleasure, constantly gives them a conflict-free life. And that's not how this goes, you know? They don't see a point to letting go of the drinking. They don't see the point in letting go of bad behaviors or bad perspectives or, I'll say unhealthy, selfish perspectives, on self-centered perspectives. Because, if I believe that's the point of living, right? Make myself feel good, right? Just trying to enjoy this life I've got for the short time I've got it, right? That's how I thought for a very long time. And it turns you into a selfish, self-centered jerk. Newsflash. There's a lot more to life than that. I didn't know it at the time. But now that I've gone through the work, I realize that's the truth. But it was very difficult for me to be willing to even let that stuff go, though. It was very difficult for me to even entertain the idea that there was more to life than just feeling good. And what I actually had to do was I had to just resign myself to being miserable for the rest of my life, because that's what I use drugs and alcohol for. And then I started living a little bit different, and then I wasn't miserable for the rest of my life. So it was like kind of a staged growth for me. And so I relate to that too. It's abstaining from and overcoming selfish gratification. I didn't see a point to it. How was I supposed to live without it, right? It seems to them like losing so much that is sweet seems to them like courting misery and giving up all happiness and pleasure, right? So much of us have this skewed sense of happiness that it resides outside of ourselves in these other people or substances or things or whatever it might be. And that's just not the truth. There's so much more to actually be gained. There's so much more to actually be doing, so much more fulfillment and contentment in the midst of even pain and misery or pain and uncomfortability or whatever it might be, and chaos. You can find fulfillment and purpose and happiness and joy, right? That physical pleasure, that association we have as happiness is usually false. But we can't see, but it's hard for us to have that willingness to let that go or give that up. So next he goes into another great part here about becoming unselfish. No man can become unselfish and thereby arrive at the highest bliss. So the more unselfish you are, the more of service you are to God and others, you will become to the highest joy, the highest bliss, until he is willing to lose, looking for neither gain nor reward, right? This is a big thing, right? When you choose to sacrifice, when you choose to do the right thing, it's not because, hey, I'm going to get something out of this. Though that's where many of us start, to be fair. That's where I started. Like, oh, my life will be better if I do it this way. So that's what they tell me, and that's what the literature says, so I'm going to do it that way, right? So my motives were selfish in the beginning, but everything in due time. Now I've come to understand that doing the right thing, regardless of its impact on me and what I want in my life, is always going to be the right thing to do. Even if it's not going to serve me the best in that immediate moment, or even if I don't think I'm going to get some selfish gratification or selfish pleasure or selfish whatever it might be, I still have to do it. Regardless of outcome, regardless of consequences, whether to gain without gain or reward, right? Not everyone's going to give me recognition that I think I deserve because I have an ego, right? Not everyone's going to reward me the way I want to be rewarded, right? I might not feel very good about doing the right thing. I might feel extremely uncomfortable, right? But doing the right thing You don't know how it's going to impact the ripple that it's going to have or what it's actually doing, but doing the right things never, doing the right thing never gets taken off the table because it doesn't make you feel good anymore. At least that's where I try to stay. It's not always easy though. So it is a state of mind which constitutes unselfishness. The man must be willing to humbly is a really big word. Humbly is a very, very big word. Sacrifice his selfish habits and practices because they are untrue and unworthy for the happiness of those about him, without expecting any reward or looking for any good to accrue for himself, right? That also means you don't get to sit here and say, I've sacrificed all of this for you and you're ungrateful and you don't recognize me, you don't appreciate me, though it is nice to be appreciated. It is nice to be recognized. But if you choose to do something, you have to make sure you're choosing to do it without that other person or other institution or whatever it might be even saying thank you. You reside and you stand on the fact that it's the right thing to do, no matter the outcome, right? This is what's important about you get to choose your behavior regularly. And always, in everything that you do, it's important that you know that you choose your behavior regardless of what the outcome is, regardless of how people respond. It is just what needs to happen, right? And he goes on to here. He must be prepared to lose for himself, to forfeit pleasure and happiness, even life itself, right? Like to stand up and to be of service in such a way and to be willing to sacrifice your own peace, your own happiness, your own, how did he say it? Pleasure, happiness, even life itself, right? Like, because that's not what's most important. Me feeling good now is not the most important thing in my life. It's nice when it happens. It's nice when I don't have shoulder pain and I've gotten a great night's sleep and things are good and I haven't had dental work done. All those things are current in my life, by the way. Right. But I have to be willing to still do the right thing. I have to be willing to still take the right actions. I have to be willing without accolades or recognition, be willing to actually say, hey, this is what I'm going to do. This is the right thing to do in this situation. Even at the expense of myself. Right? And that's what we're aiming, just to be unselfish. And it says here, no man loses by the sacrifice of self or some portion of self, right? We don't get rid of self all the time or all in one go. It is, at least it's been my experience. Maybe some people are saints out there, but, and are much more effective at it. You know, I shouldn't say that jokingly, but mine's been progressive and understanding the depth and weight of it. So when he says, I'm glad he adds these types of things, no man loses by the sacrifice of self or some portion of self, right? Because I keep finding portions of self that I need to sacrifice. Nevertheless, he thinks he will lose by so doing. And because he so thinks, he suffers. And this is where the sacrifice comes in, right? If I thought from the beginning that letting go of drugs and alcohol was going to reward me was going to end up with a great life that was beyond my wildest dreams, some might say, it wouldn't have been painful. It would have just been uncomfortable and I would have gone through it and it would have been okay. My suffering came from the fact that I didn't believe that was true. My suffering came from the fact that I wanted to hold on to it because it was the only life that I knew, right? That's where I suffered. The actions were the same. It's my thinking about it that would be different. If when I first put down the substances, I was like, hey, I'm going to have a beautiful life on the other side of this. And I truly believe that. Wouldn't have suffered at all. It would have been exciting. I would have been excited to just go live differently and learn all this stuff and just embrace it. But no, well, at least not for a guy like me. I made it painful. I had to rip the selfishness and self-centeredness out one thought at a time. And eventually it resulted in a beautiful life. Eventually it resulted in some great blessings I never thought were possible for a guy like me. But I suffered because of the way I thought about it. So that is one of the most true sentences. Because he so thinks, he suffers. And this is where the sacrifice comes in, because sacrifice is letting go of something and willingness to endure the pain of the letting go. This is where he gains by losing. He goes on next. All true sacrifice is within. It is spiritual and hidden, and it is prompted by deep humility of heart. So it's not the drugs and alcohol that were the sacrifice. It was my thinking about the drugs and alcohol that was the sacrifice. It was my thinking about relationships that were sacrificed. It was my thinking about money that needed to be sacrificed, right? Suffering and that pain that I've gone through and I continue to go through as I find more things. It's inside of me. It's a soul sickness, some might say. Right? Some in 12-step fellowships, they call it a spiritual malady. It's a spiritual problem. It is spiritual and hidden and is prompted by a deep humility. There's humility again, right? Humility is so important, that realization of having an honest appraisal of yourself and that willingness to see yourself with I'll say integrity or in reality, right? And deep humility of heart. Nothing but the sacrifice of self can avail, and to this must all men come sooner or later during their spiritual evolution. So if you're going through a spiritual journey, a spiritual evolution, you will come to this point. You can either embrace it or try to beat around the bush, but all growth resides on the other side of it. But in what does the self-abnegation consist? Abnegation, by the way, is self-denial. How is it practiced? Where is it sought and found? This is a great part. It consists in overcoming the daily proneness to selfish thoughts and acts. Doom scrolling, bad eating, lack of exercise, bad attitude, selfish behaviors. It's overcoming the daily proneness to selfish thoughts and acts. It is practiced in our common intercourse with others. It is found in the hour of tumult and temptation, right? When you have the desire to do something, but you sacrifice that and you say, I'm not going to do it, and I'm going to walk through this uncomfortable emotion, this feeling I have in my soul that I just want to change, right? This selfish thing that I have sitting in front of me that I want to just use for my own selfish ends. When we sacrifice that, that is where it resides. There are hidden sacrifices of the heart, which are infinitely blessed both to him and makes them and those for whom they are made, albeit making much cause, effort, and some pain. Right? There are hidden sacrifices of the heart, which are infinitely blessed for both him that makes them and those for whom they are made. Right? So our sacrifices will ultimately benefit us and those around us. We just don't know how, right? I love this. So many people just want to have this grandiose, I'm super important, I'm Superman, I'm the savior, I'm a hero, I'm this and that, right? Men are anxious to do some great thing, to perform some great sacrifice which lies beyond the necessities of their experience, right? They want to be this amazing person. They can't. It's all delusional. While all the time, perhaps they're neglecting the one thing needful, are blind to the sacrifice which by its very nearness is rendered imperative. What are you not sacrificing? Are you just playing video games all the time, right? You're watching pornography all the time. You're concerned with dating apps. Are you concerned with getting in a relationship? Are you concerned with making so much money so you actually feel secure? Are you concerned with the drinking and the drugging and the partying? Are you concerned with the resentment, right? You want to go be this amazing person, be this hero, be this master of society, but you can't even manage yourself. You aren't even willing to let go of your own bad habits, let alone be someone that is thrust some of the greatest responsibility on. It's amazing. We think there's going to be this momentary transformation. It's not. Look to right where you are to find what you need to do. And I have to do that on a daily basis. It starts here, not out there. It starts right here. And then that you change here, and then everything around you changes. It's kind of amazing. And then if you do that, if so, then you are ready to make those hidden sacrifices which lead to beatific bliss. Beatific bliss. What a beautiful word. So, and that's it. That's where we're going to stop today. So that blissful living, that nearness with God, you might want to call bliss, that's on the other end of these selfish and self-centered, self-absorbed, egocentric, whatever you want to call them, behaviors. And that we're going to get into next week. We're at least going to get started. He has, I think, 7 or 8 of them that we're going to read about in this chapter, and we're going to go through them one by the week. So thank you so much for going through that with me. I absolutely love this chapter. I don't know if you can tell from the energy I'm bringing to it. It's had a significant impact on my life, and I hope it does the same for you. I would recommend just the entire book, especially the burden dropping chapter. Absolutely incredible. That's another one that changed my life. There's a lot of things that have really helped me grow in understanding and peace and love. So, but thank you all for joining me and in my new makeshift office right here. And we'll keep moving forward, and maybe we'll see the bookcases again next week, but we'll see how it goes. So thank you so much for joining me, though. And until next time, thanks.